Hey everybody, we're here at the end of Earth Month this year, and I thought we would talk to you a little bit about how you can do some composting at your house. If you're stuck at home like we are, you're doing a lot more of your cooking here at the house, which means you've got a lot more food scraps, that kind of thing. Those are definitely things that you can be throwing into your compost pile. Also, if you're living in Lexington, we're not doing the city's yard waste collection, so there's a lot of leaves and twigs and debris from the winter that you're kind of stuck with. So it's a great time to start a compost pile. So yeah, we're going to show you how to do that today. When we create a compost pile, we're basically just helping nature to speed up a process that it already is doing, which is decaying organic material and turning it back into dirt. Having compost is great. It's a great addition to your soil. It will improve your soil. Having lots of compost in your garden beds helps it to retain moisture, and it's also a great sort of natural fertilizer for your plants. Another great reason to compost is that it reduces the amount of material that goes to the landfill. In Lexington, about 30% of what we send to the landfill is food and food waste. So having a compost pile and composting that material helps cut down a lot on the amount of material that you're sending to the landfill.
So setting up a compost pile is relatively easy. It can be something very complex. You can have a system with multiple parts. It can be something really simple, just a pile of organic material. It could be something that's really expensive. You can go out and buy $100 and up composting bins online, or it could be something that you build for really cheap. And so what we're going to do today is build a very simple lazy man's composter in the backyard. One thing you're going to want to consider is where to place your composter. You need it to be outdoors, obviously. Having a little bit of shade is great, especially in the summer. It keeps your pile from drying out. And you want to put it away from your neighbors. So in our yard, we're going to put this in the back corner. It's away from our house. It's away from our neighbor's house. So if there are any smells while we're doing the composting, it's not going to be a nuisance for us or for our neighbors.
Okay, so what we did is we took our cinder blocks and we kind of stacked them so they'll be somewhat sturdy to create this little self-contained area right here. And now we're beginning to build our compost pile. You need 4 things to make compost. You need air, oxygen, you need water and moisture, you need browns, which are this anything that's kind of woody, twiggy. Takes a long time for this to decompose in nature. And you need greens, which are things like these weeds, these leaves. These are very high in nitrogen and they will break down much faster than the browns will. So what we're doing is basically building the kind of lasagna or layer cake of browns and then greens on top of that, and then browns and then greens. And so some folks will create a compost pile that's one area that is to collect materials and the other area that's sort of actively building the compost. But what I'm doing, because I'm pretty lazy and I don't want to have to do that, is I'm just making one area and I'm just going to slowly add to it over and over, and then at some point I'm going to turn it maybe 2 or 3 times a year and it will slowly make dirt. I'm not terribly concerned about making a lot of dirt quickly. I just want to have a place to put these scraps to keep them out of the landfill and then slowly build dirt for my garden. It's not super imperative for me. Some folks are very active. They have 2 or maybe even 3 of these containers, and so they're constantly turning and moving things back and forth and keeping their pile at a very high temperature. What's going to happen is once we put greens on top of this and it gets the right level of moisture, this pile is going to get very hot, and that's what's going to break down the materials. And so if you looked at it on a graph, the heat would go up, and then as the green material breaks down, it's going to start going back down. That's when people start to turn their piles, and that constant flux, they're trying to keep that temperature up to break down the materials quicker and quicker. My personal style is just to sort of let it go and let nature do its thing, and just kind of slowly build the pile over time. So the things that you can put into your compost pile, like grass clippings, weeds that you pull, food scraps, those are all going to be in that greens category. Again, the browns are going to be your leaves, your twigs, your sticks, wood shavings. If you're not recycling paper right now, you can shred up your paper, rip it up. You can put that in your compost as a brown. The browns are also helpful because they'll help keep the smell down a little bit as things start to decompose. Things that you want to avoid putting in your compost pile would be fats, oils, and grease. Any kind of dairy, any kind of meat products or bones, you do not want to put those into your pile. Those will attract raccoons, rats, other critters that will be coming to try to find that food. And it's also, there are composters that will compost those things, but for the basic kind of pile that we showed you how to make today, those things will not compost very quickly and they will attract vermin and rodents. You do not want to compost dog waste or cat waste or even human waste. Those things have certain microbial properties that would be very bad for you to put into your garden or to put into any place where you're going to be growing food or anything that you eat. And most people are not going to get their piles hot enough to kill those bacteria. And then if there are weeds that have already gone to seed or that require super high heat to kill those seeds, you kind of want to maybe avoid putting those in your pile, just because most folks aren't, like, I'm not going to get my pile hot enough to kill really noxious weeds. So I don't want to put those weeds into my pile, because, especially if they've gone to seed, because then I'll just be putting those weeds back into my garden bed later. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're able to do something constructive and build yourself a compost pile.